Gracias, Aurora. Gracias, Carolina. And please, guys, at home, remember to send your questions, okay? They are very important to us. When it comes to national immigration issues, I'm pretty sure you have heard a lot about two words, DACA and DAPA. Joining me now to explain those terms and what's happening nationally and how they can affect locally, we have Ali Noorani, right here in this camera. You are the Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We also have Cassie Luevano with the Republican Party of Texas. Thank you for coming, Cassie.
Of course, glad to be here.
Also, somebody who's very well known here in Houston, Texas, especially if you watch local newscasts, Cesar Espinosa, founder of the organization Immigrant Families and Students in the Struggle, also known as FIEL.
Thank you for having me. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And we also have Vladimir Davidiuk. Did I say it right?
You did.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. You are also with the Harris County Republican Party.
I am. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us, Guy. Well, if somebody at home is not familiar with those acronyms DACA and DAPA, I'm going to ask Cesar, what do they mean?
DACA stands for the Defense of Childhood Arrivals for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program, which was established as an executive order that was announced by President Obama after 10 years of long struggle by the Dreamer movement, more than 10 years. So it's something that didn't just come about and materialize out of clean air. It is a movement that built up fighting for the DREAM Act, which ended up being the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program. Fortunately, right now our community is under attack. We as Dreamers are under attack, but we're going to continue to fight not only for our futures, but for the more than 11 million undocumented people who currently reside and live within the United States.
But President Trump, he said that people with DACA is fine.
They have said, but unfortunately, because of political reasons, Ken Paxton, who is the real criminal, who is being indicted for committing crimes, is decided to use Dreamers as a political ploy to get attention away from him. So we will be watching, and we know what this really means. And in reality, the life of 800,000 undocumented immigrants are in their hands right now. So we ask that Dreamers come out of the shadows, they continue to fight, and they continue to fight for justice.
Now, Vladimir, Texas General Attorney Ken Paxton, he said that he's not okay with DACA and he wants to eliminate it. Do you agree with him, and why?
I do agree with him, and it makes good policy sense. DACA and DAPA were both implemented by President Obama using an executive order. And that's a reflection on his failed leadership when he became president. He became president in 2009. He had 2 years of a Congress controlled, dominated by Democrats, and the White House. He could have passed any agenda he wanted. He had the ability to push through immigration reform. In fact, for years, before he became president, when he was campaigning, he promised the Hispanic community that he would resolve their immigration crisis, that he would resolve the problems that America's having with immigration reform and implement comprehensive program. He failed to do so. So what did that leave him? He had a pen and he had a phone. He decided to implement DACA and DAPA, which are policies that on their face are admirable. And it's understandable that we would want those people who came here through no fault of their own and are productive members of society, we'd want to try to find a way to remedy that. But implementing it through an executive order was exactly the wrong policy.
Well, but does make it a wrong policy just being implemented by an executive order?
It doesn't have the force of law. That's the problem. It needed Congress to pass a law, and it needed the signature of a president to make it full authority and constitutionally compliant. The fact that President Obama decided to use his pen and use his phone to pass DACA and pass DAPA because he had squandered his opportunity to use the legislative process is a reflection on his failed leadership and his failure to follow through on his promises to the Hispanic community who's present here.
Well,
now, here's the problem with that. We have an opportunity to remedy those things, but we need both sides to work together to find a comprehensive solution.
Exactly.
And right now, we don't have both sides working together. We have one side working against finding a solution, and it's the Democrats who are doing it.
Well,
let me ask Cassie this. Okay, when President Obama tried to help the immigrant community, the Congress was, and still the majority is Republican, so he never found the support. So,
Well, and that's exactly the point. Like he said, you can't pick up a pen in your phone to do it. We got to work together, and as the leader of this country, I think he was responsible to connect with Congress and make sure that we implement the rules that he's obligated to do. He's a leader and he needs to lead by example, which he failed to do. And as Republicans, we stand with our leadership from the governor to the attorney general and the lieutenant governor. We absolutely stand and we support them 100% as the Republican Party of Texas.
But the Republican Party didn't offer any other alternative.
Well, you see, and before we can have those conversations, this leads into why we need to reform our immigration system. This is exactly our point that we're trying to make. We in Texas, we in America, we can champion all these efforts. We are a nation that is viewed by the world. You know, we have the American dream, but we must follow these policies and we must work together as a country, Congress and the president. We must lock arms and listen to our leadership.
Ali, well, we are talking that President Obama may not be the right way, the DACA and DAPA, but do you think that maybe was a first good step for an immigration reform?
You know, I got to be honest with you. We can relitigate the past. We can debate kind of who said what, who did what. But right now, we are faced with a Trump administration, a Republican Senate, a Republican House. There is a tremendous opportunity for Republicans to seize this moment and actually advance the interests of the American worker and their families by passing different immigration reforms. What worries us is that the administration so far has moved forward with executive orders that ramp up enforcement dramatically, that seek to ban Muslims and refugees fleeing violence, and we've seen the House Republicans only move legislation that increases enforcement. In fact, there are Republicans in Senate that want to slash legal immigration by 50%. Republicans are missing a tremendous opportunity. In fact, the only person, one of the only people in the United States Congress right now leaning into this from a Republican perspective is Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Yesterday, he teamed up with Dick Durbin to introduce the DREAM Act. That's what we need, but it requires Republicans to look beyond an enforcement-only approach. And right now, that's where the majority of them are stuck.
Do you agree that the Republican Party is missing a chance right now?
I don't think that we're missing a chance. I think we're having an opportunity where we could lead if we had an opposition party that was willing to use this as a chance to implement real immigration reform and not just as a political talking point. The problem that we face now is that the opposition, Democrats, are consistently interested only in using immigration reform as a way to bash Republicans, as a talking point to further their own agenda, and as a fundraising mechanism. They've implemented nothing, they've offered nothing that offers a long-term solution to actually move forward.
You want to say something about that, right?
No,
So the funny part about this is that when the Democrats are in power, Republicans say Democrats should move forward. When Republicans are in power, they say Democrats should move forward.
So basically it's politics, right?
Right. So, I mean, I think what we have to do here is realize that, and I wrote a book about this. It's called There Goes the Neighborhood. And what I found is that the majority of Americans, they do not see this issue as one of politics and policy. They see this issue as culture and values. And they want to live, yes, in a country that is safe, but they want to live in a country that is welcoming. And that's the opportunity that Republicans have.
Now, Cesar, let me ask you this. Are people who can enroll on DACA, are they afraid of enrolling now?
There's a huge fear in the enrollment of DACA because coming out of the shadows, I mean, is kind of a big deal. I mean, we're people who were born here, who are not born here, who have studied here, who have lived our entire lives here, and to all of a sudden give up the information to a federal government who apparently doesn't seem to want us here, even though they use our community, even though they profit from our community, then that's a big deal. And to your point, it's been the same message for over a decade that you want enforcement and your party wants to use our community and in many instances take advantage of our community, but at the same time you don't want anything, and that's modern day slavery. And the same thing, to reinstate your point, it's the same thing. When President Obama was in office, you said he doesn't want to work with the Republican Party, he doesn't want to do this, but your party didn't want to work with him either. And now you're saying that, oh, okay, well but now the Democrats don't want to work. So you can't play with our lives. We are human beings and we deserve the right to live under the Constitution with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Cassie,
and that's what we deserve.
You want to say something about that, right?
Absolutely.
Cassie.
On that note, coming under, being Americans and following the rule of law and the Constitution,
I'm an American.
Not saying that you're not. Let me head to a conversation that I'm about to have. One thing that our country is struggling with, our state is struggling with, is doing something exactly like this. And I'm happy to be here today. These conversations with leaders from both sides, they need to happen more often. And it doesn't need to be from one side of the street to the other.
Exactly.
We need leaders from both sides to come together. And you know what? We have to thank God that we can do that in this country, you know, because in a lot of other areas, it doesn't happen that way. We can't have a police chief. We can't have an attorney. We can't have the activist. We're in America. We got to turn the new leaf. We have to respect the leadership that we have. Like I said, it's important. And I know that in these communities, I come from a community. I come from a background of the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas, one of the most, you know, Brownsville, which is an hour south of where I was born, one of the poorest areas in the country. And I know that we have these leaders, but we must follow the legal process in order to ensure that we keep championizing America. That's the president's message, to make America great again.
Vladimir, let me ask you this. Do you think that DACA has affected in a negative way our society or the country?
Well, the question isn't whether or not DACA has negatively affected our country. The question is, and to respond to something that Cesar said, the people who came here under that umbrella, DACA and DAPA, came here, as he said, because they had the dream of the American dream. They wanted to come to a country where they had the opportunity to experience life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The thing is that the dream, the American dream, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are all based on the foundation of the American principle, which is based on the rule of law. Without the rule of law, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is non-existent. Without the law, the concept of the American dream is non-existent. If we refuse to adhere to the concept of law, if we refuse to recognize ourselves as, yes, sure, we're a nation of immigrants, but before we were a nation of immigrants, we were a nation of laws. And if we refuse to recognize the fact that we're a nation of laws, the fact that whoever wants to come here is irrelevant. What makes America great, what makes the opportunity for immigrants to come here great, is that the nation is based on laws, and that gives us the opportunity to create a society that allows the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Let me ask you this. So what solution do we have for people who is running away from gangs, poverty from
There's
Mexico, South America?
processes for all of those things. There are rules and laws put in place.
What's that process? Because
Well, number one, you know, we want the most safe and the humanitarian thing to happen. Just in our state alone, you know, we could look at this at a bigger scale, from the Canada border to the California, Florida, the coastal border. But in Texas alone, we live it every day. Whether it's the Texas heat, okay, from sheriffs, from law enforcement to West Texas, to Southwest Texas, to the Rio Grande Valley, those willing to come to America to prosper, we do not want their lives in danger. And that is one of our strongest voices that we're trying to push across here. It's a tragic event.
Ali, I want to give the word to Ali.
So in Central America, we've seen the countries in the Northern Triangle decimated by gang violence. Unfortunately, our refugee laws, both at the national level and the international level, do not recognize gang violence as a government motivated violence that somebody can legally flee. Therefore, mothers make very, very difficult decisions to pay a cartel to smuggle their child to safety in the U.S. Now, this administration, instead of focusing on the criminal element in the Northern Triangle, they want to go after the mothers who are trying to bring their children to safety.
Exactly.
That is
Now they're an accomplice, right?
Right. And so, I mean, when you ask the question about DACA, DACA was very important for 750,000 young people. I would argue that DACA was actually more important for millions and millions and millions of Americans who realize that their child's best friend is undocumented. The family one pew over at church is undocumented. The family down the street is undocumented. So regardless of what this Attorney General does, what the President does, those millions of Americans, they cannot unremember that.
We have about 2 minutes to end up this segment, so final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I mean, a lot of these people came to the United States to escape dangers to their lives. They came to escape la mordida or plata o plomo. They came here because they knew America is based on laws, America is based on security, and that's where they can achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was what they came here for.
Sir?
It's important to point out that we must remember history, and we must remember that it's very convenient for a country to sometimes remember only laws that they feel convenient at the time. Slavery was a law at the time, and it wasn't just. And our immigration system is not just at the time. So it's important that we fight back, that we continue to organize, and that our community stands up for its humanity, and we will be doing that. And gracias a las mamás que son tan poderosas y a los niños que son también tan poderosos por luchar y por estar aquí.
Casey?
I'm going to remain that we just don't have a broken immigration system. We've had a broken immigration system. And it is time that we fix it, and we fix it the absolutely correct way. We want Texas to prosper, and we want immigrants to come over legally and enjoy the process, to enjoy those freedoms and safeties for not just their families, but the communities they choose to live in.
Thank you.
I would say a big thank you to Houston. I've spent a lot of time in Houston recently, and I've come to really learn so much from Houston as the most diverse city in the United States. And I don't think the country realizes the vibrancy here, and the fact that the city of Houston can encourage the congressional delegation and Senators Cruz and Cornyn to support the DREAM Act.
Yeah, because to be honest, Houston is not only, the immigration community is not only the Latinos. These people from all around the world. In fact, more than 126 languages are spoken in our area. We have covered a lot in this discussion, so now let's check with Aurora to see how the folks at home are responding.
Muchas gracias, Osvaldo. Here at our digital studio, people keep chiming in about immigration and DACA and DAPA particularly. We have someone like Texas leftist telling us, to clarify, no one has come under DAPA. Trump threw it out because family protections were not important to him. Others, like an American Latino, is saying, kind of reflecting the confusion in the community. As an American Latino, do I have to carry my passport at all times? He is an American, so he shouldn't be concerned about that. But here with us again is immigration lawyer Carolina Ortuzar Diaz to answer some of those questions. Carolina, thank you again. Joycelyn Uribe is asking us the following. I came to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. I now have 4 children. One of them has special needs. What are my guarantees that even if I have DACA, I won't be deported?
Right, no guarantees, because DACA is not a law. DACA is only an executive action that could change at any moment, at any time, if the new administration decides to cancel DACA. It's just, it's not passed through Congress, so that's a really important thing to keep in mind. So now, is there a chance that with that information, you know, being here, with being the mother of 4 children, where's the likelihood that she's going to be deported? She probably has a chance, you know, to fight her case in court, to fight that deportation, to legalize her status. It's not that easy, but under DACA, there's no guarantees.
Okay, Angelica Salazar is asking us, what's going to happen with DACA under Trump's presidency?
Well, there is a question, right? Because during the campaign, the Trump administration, or President Trump now, said that he was going to get rid of DACA. He took power and he decided that he was not going to stop or cancel DACA. We are facing potential challenges in court, and we have been told by Kelly, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, that he was not going to be defending DACA. So we are in serious trouble, I feel. This is not a for sure thing.
And along those lines, Lucely Lopez is asking, could you tell more about the bridge that is being discussed to replace DACA?
Right. That would be a law. This is a bill in Congress that will allow DACA recipients, so the young the young people who is already a DACA recipient who has a work permit, to allow them to basically do a little transfer, like transition into something else. So we actually just heard about a new bill that it was submitted in Congress. It's an initiative that will actually legalize people with DACA. So we see some positive news from Congress.
Okay, Carolina, here we have someone asking specifically for you, is SB4 linked to DACA?
Well, no, because DACA is an executive action coming from the federal government. SB4 is a state law that is going to create more difficulties, in my view, right, to people that doesn't have a driving license, that is going to encounter the police, and that may result basically in an arrest and a transfer with ICE. So, but they're not linked, but they're connected, because at the end of the day, if you have DACA, you have a work permit. And with the work permit in Texas, you have a right to request a driver license. If you have a driver license, under SB4, the police officer may not inquire into your immigration status.
Okay, and very quickly and finally, Libre USA is asking, what is the likelihood that those immigrants picked up end up in a prison, and how long are they generally held?
Ooh, people detained are priority for deportation. Let's put it that way first. There's a high likelihood that if you have an encounter with the police and you don't have an immigration status at this point, you're going to be transferred with immigration, even if it's just a traffic violation, high likelihood. And we're seeing people detained for minor traffic violations between 2 to 3 weeks before they can ask for a bond before an immigration judge.
Okay, thank you very much, Carolina. And remember, please keep sending your comments and questions for our experts here at our digital studio with the hashtags Tu voz es poder or Your voice is power. Back to you, Osvaldo and Gabby.
Immigration is one topic that ties many of us together, but with the diversity of Houston's Latino community, there's another bond that connects us, that of achieving the American dream.
And here we have one local story of success wrapped in a delicious chocolate coating.